rocks might melt, the sea may burn. I'm learning to fly, but ain't got wings. Coming down, the hardest thing. Some say life will beat you down, break your heart, steal your crown. So I've started out for God knows where. I guess I'll know when I get there. I'm learning to fly, but ain't got wings. Coming down, the hardest thing. Learning to fly, but ain't got wings. Coming down, the hardest thing. I'm learning to fly around the clouds. What goes up must come down. I'm learning to fly. I'm learning to fly. Learning to fly. Learning to fly. Learning to fly. Learning to fly.
Good morning and welcome to Fountain Street Church. I'm the Reverend Christopher Rowe, and for this season at Fountain Street, I am the acting minister. And on behalf of our congregation, welcome to worship this morning. This morning, we end what was a long and wonderful and joyous spring pulpit series where we heard from a diverse array of voices and perspectives. And today we come together in worship to recognize and celebrate and bid farewell to our senior minister, Reverend Dr. Fred Wooden. After 15 years of service, this morning we bring together perspectives and appreciations and great respects from our congregants. And later you'll have the chance to join us for a special Zoom coffee hour. On behalf of everybody who made this morning possible, and particularly to those who wanted to offer special recognition to Fred, thank you. And thank you to you for joining us as we say farewell and recognize the ministry of Fred Wooden in Fountain Street Church for the past 15 years. This is Fountain Street Church, and I'm so glad you're with us this morning.
Good morning. My name is Steve Crandall, and I've been a member of Fountain Street Church for over 50 years. I'm pleased to be able to say a few words in honor of Fred Wooden this morning. Fred did not want this to be about him personally, but more about legacy. In what way has he contributed to this church in his time here? I have two main themes that I'd like to describe. Significant themes that I believe we had not seen in this place before Fred joined us. I was the chair of the governing board when Fred arrived 15 years ago. He came at a difficult time. We had just emerged from a strained and short-lived ministry of Fred's predecessor and had interim help while a new search committee began its work. Our past had a common thread of a strong pulpit with corresponding strong, in fact, I'd even say dominant senior ministers. This formed the culture for much of our church. A strong man at the head with a congregation that was perhaps more intellectually engaged than personally or actively engaged. Of course, there were many individuals who had diverse involvements within the congregation, but as an institution, this seemed to be the model. Fred's style changed all of this. Of course, we still craved a strong preacher, and there is no doubt he fulfilled this, one of the best around. But more important, he focused on the Fountain Street community and prompted active involvement in it, not just internally, but in the greater society in which we live. He challenged us to be personally committed and involved. It wasn't about the leader and the flock. It was about free the mind, grow the soul, and change the world. Under Fred's leadership, the church internal activity soared, groups within the church flourished, our involvement and reputation in the greater society grew. The second and related theme does in fact have to do with some important personal characteristics. You know the phrase, walk the talk. No, it's not walk the walk or talk the talk. Don't get me started. The phrase is walk the talk, which of course means demonstrating what we claim, or more appropriately for us perhaps, practicing what we preach. This is one of Fred's finest qualities. While he was encouraging us to become more involved and active, he was right there with us and even more. He was at Rosa Parks Circle every week demonstrating for LGBTQ rights. His involvement in the Black community was absolute, and he brought us ways to be involved as well. The experiment to actively incorporate the downtown homeless and disenfranchised into our church lives made many of us uncomfortable and maybe didn't work out as hoped, but it was walking the talk. There are many more examples. The best way to influence behavior is to model it for others, to lead by example, and this was one of Fred's greatest contributions. So now Fred heads for his next adventure. I dare say that Fountain Street is much more prepared and excited to embrace our next adventure with Reverend Mariela because of Fred's tenure. Thank you, Fred, for your commitment and your attention over the years. We wish you well.
Teenagers can be a pain. Some of you may once have been a teenager, and at times, some of you may once have been a pain. But there's a reason for that. Because, well, being a teenager in and of itself can be a pain. You are in that awkward stage of life where you still value the comforts that a loving, protecting, providing figure offers, but at the same time, you're also wanting to free your mind, grow your soul, change the world on your own terms. You've got things to do. And even though we at Fountain Street Church are now over 150 years old, there are times when, regardless of age, you're going to be a teenager. Now, you usually don't get far telling a teenager what to do. You often have to let them figure it out for themselves, but you can help them along the way by setting a good example. Because though it doesn't always look like it, teenagers are always paying attention. They're learning from you. And do as I say, not as I do, just doesn't fly. We've been lucky to have Reverend Dr. W. Fred Wooden leading us for the last 15 years and being such a great example. Fred has been and will be known as one of the great social justice ministers of this era. He has always recognized social justice issues promptly and properly before many people were even aware there was such an issue. With Fred's leadership, we were out there early, doing our sign thing, sharing our voices in groups for marriage equality. Today, there are supporters at the corner of Monroe and Pearl with their signs. Yet, again, with Fred's leadership, we have been gathering there for the same purpose, on the same location, on the first Wednesday of every month. For years, Pride events, Urban League support, women's rights, unhoused neighbors, the list goes on. Much of what we were doing wasn't easy, because with Fred's awareness, we were one of the first doing it. Figuring out something that needed to be done, taking action, making mistakes, fixing mistakes, doing it better. Literally, Fred walked the walk. Because of Fred's example, we know how to be aware better and do better. And wow, do we ever do. Alt Prom, Choice Fund, our artists creating banners for the portico practically overnight, transporting busloads of people to Washington, D.C. for the Women's March. Again, the list goes on. We are here today with the prospects of a great future because we have had the wonderful example set by Fred. And as he enjoys some well-deserved retirement, I hope a smile crosses his face when he hears of us doing our Fountain Street thing and realizes that yes, we were paying attention. For being such a great leader by example and for everything else. Thank you, Fred.
When lonely feelings chill the meadows of your mind, just think if winter comes, can spring be far behind? Beneath the deepest snows, the secret of a rose is merely that it knows you must believe in spring. Just as a tree is sure its leaves will reappear, it knows its emptiness is just a time of year. The frozen mountains' dreams of April's melting streams, how crystal clear it seems you must believe in spring. You must believe in love and trust it's on its way. Just as a sleeping rose awaits the kiss of May, so in a world of snow, of things that come and go, when what you think you know, you can't be certain of, you must believe in spring. You must believe in love and trust it's on its way. Just as a sleeping rose awaits the kiss of May, so in a world of snow, come and go. When what you think you know, you can't be certain of. You must believe in spring and love.
Fred, during 40 years of ministry, you have defined liberal religion effectively, often brilliantly. As a theologian, you present complex ideas in a way that we can understand. You have used the pulpit effectively. For many of us, you have been and are helpful in our journey to grow our spirits. We are grateful, for nothing is more important. A minister with talent that has fulfilled one of the primary responsibilities of the profession. But so much more is required of a minister. Those of us at Fountain Street Church who have walked the shadow of death have found you walking with us, comforting, explaining the impossible. Your words in private and in memorial remembrances have been uplifting and reveal the capacity of your heart for overwhelming feeling. You have helped through one of life's most trying times, and you have pointed with hope the way we should live. Your large heart led you to publicly support causes that were just. You were at times willing to mount the barricades, women's rights, LGBTQ rights, Black Lives Matter, homeless people. Your objection to what transpires in Washington summoned you to attack, even making a run for Congress. We Fountain Streeters are used to our minister taking strong stands on social and political issues. Whether we agree individually or not, we expect it. You have fulfilled that expectation. You have admirably continued another Fountain Street tradition, an open church. This is a place where those of many persuasions may speak, where all may present, where music of all kinds can fill our sanctuary. We are a church in the heart of the city, with a heart to receive the city. You embody that concept. We thank you. Your music gene has left its mark on this church. You can't help yourself. For those of us who cannot live without music in our lives, your ministry has served us well. Your recent sermons, using your favorite music selections as texts, I believe unique in the annals of preaching. They are brilliant. I was brought up in the time of Harry Emerson Fosdick, Ralph Stockman, George Buttrick, Norman Vincent Peale, and Henry Sloane Coughlin. I listened to them all. Yet your music sermons I consider among the best of any I have heard. Whether it is music or the visual arts in the church, you have been an advocate. Thank you. As an old person, I experience the church differently from younger adults and children. I can only express what comes within my purview. Others younger than I will express appreciation for what they have received from you as senior minister. Yet to all of us, you are transparent. You share your emotions. This left you exposed at times, but we genuinely know you. It makes for intensity in the relationship between ministers and members of the congregation. In that intensity, you have said and preached that loving one another was the essence of life. As you pushed us to free the mind, grow the soul, and change the world. As Fantine, Valjean, and Eponine sing together in the beautiful trio from Les Miserables, to love another person is to see the face of God. You have always held that before us. Thank you, Fred. May peace and understanding be yours and Wendy's for the rest of your days.
that's pretty much my first look at the church 15 years ago when I got a CD from the search committee asking me if I'm interested in applying for the job. Still impressive, but you knew that already. It is fitting, I think, that I start my thoughts with a 15-year-old image because as similar as that is to 15 years ago, so much else has changed. I'm 15 years older. The city is larger than it used to be and more complicated. What is left for me to say, though? Well, for one thing, what I thought was hard turned out to be easy. I thought retirement would be hard. I thought that finding a new senior minister would be hard. I thought that finding my next venture would be hard, and I'm still working on all of those things, and you're working on the middle one. But they are easy compared to what's happened in the meantime. Coronavirus brought humanity to an absolute stop. A little virus was able to bring us right to the edge of nothing. Remarkable when you think about it, and kind of scary. It reminded us that civilization is at best a thin veneer over reality. Think about the number, 100,000 people already dead. More than fit in the big house on a big Saturday. 3 times the number of people who die every year in traffic accidents. It's a staggering number. By comparison, retirement is easy. By comparison, choosing a new minister is easy. And then, on top of all of that, the murder of George Floyd, which set off a wave of anger and outrage that ran from coast to coast and is still going. Because racism is it's our national epidemic. The question on every thoughtful mind is whether this time we will actually treat the illness. So much of our society rests precariously on patterns and systems that were built on racist notions. Among the poems I memorized a few years ago was one by James Weldon Johnson, Dean of the Harlem Renaissance, whose lyrics form the basis for Lift Every Voice. Now, I like this poem because it's so important, but also because Weldon, his middle name is my first name, Weldon, and so I feel a certain obligation to keep his memory alive. James Weldon Johnson wrote years ago, "How would you have us, as we are, or sinking neath the load we bear, with eyes fixed forward to a star, or staring empty at despair, rising or falling, men or things, with drooping pace or footsteps fleet, strong willing sinews, in your wings or tightening chains about your feet." That's still the choice. After 400 years, we are still having to choose whether or not to let race define us, because to the extent that we allow racism to be part of the country, we're letting it define the entire country. So that made retirement, at least for me, a whole lot easier. Not because it was easy, but because it clarified instantaneously what lies ahead for me and what lies ahead for you. So here it is, 2020. The church looks pretty much the same, but everything else seems to be a lot different. I've got a lot more gray. The city has a lot more buildings. And just in the last 3 months, we have felt our society utterly challenged. The coronavirus has shown us how precarious our purchase on the planet really is. A little virus was able to bring us almost to a complete stop as a civilization. Over 100,000 people have died. That's as many people as die in traffic accidents every month. It's a staggering thought. But that's not the only thing. In the midst of this pandemic, our other epidemic became evident: racism. The murder of George Floyd set off a wave of anger and frustration and outrage that is far larger than him. It's about all the unarmed black men and women who have suffered police brutality and more and want it to end. We've had demonstrations here in Grand Rapids, riots, broken windows, and a lot of unhappiness about all of that. The question is whether we will deal with this epidemic the way we are trying to deal with the coronavirus and really try to cure it. I'm not sure. It's 400 years old, remember? It's going to be hard. You may know that I memorize things, and one of the poems I memorized is by James Weldon Johnson. Remember, Weldon is my first name. He was the so-called dean of the Harlem Renaissance, the writer of the lyrics to Lift Every Voice and Sing, and he wrote this poem too that I keep in my heart. He wrote, "How would you have us, as we are, or sinking 'neath the load we bear, with eyes fixed forward to a star, or staring empty at despair, rising or falling, men or things, with drooping pace or footsteps fleet, strong willing sinews in your wings, or tightening chains about your feet?" That really is the choice, still 100 years after he wrote it. Racism can either be the chains that tighten about our feet, or its eradication can give us new flight as a community. Now, I would love to tell you how to be part of that, but I can't. The discipline of clergy life says when you let go, you let go. And hand that to someone else. And that's what I'm doing. I saw some video of the parade you provided for my wonderful successor, Mariela Perez Simons, and that looked like great fun. We were supposed to have a party for my retirement back in March, but sadly that is not possible. There was even going to be a cake, and I still want that cake. But this occasion is not about celebrating me, but about honoring our time together. And the time that we've had together has changed the entire city and changed the entire country. So, as I let go of my relationship to you as senior minister, I am proud that I've had some influence over where you're going to go. That I have given you an opportunity to rise up to the reality of racism in America, to own your advocacy for the LGBTQ+ community, to engage with the poor and the homeless as more than just figures and statistics. That, I'm sure, is part of what I can leave behind and take some pride in. So, thank you for letting me plant those seeds in my years with you. I am sure Mariela and Christopher and you will help them grow to new heights. As many of you know, my personal spiritual practice has been with this Jewish community, and even though they have been on hiatus, just like we have been all these weeks, I continued to read the Torah portion week after week, and now I find myself in the book of Deuteronomy, which is essentially the last words of Moses. So you might see where I'm going at this point. Last words, leader, going through the wilderness, that whole thing. And it is part of the story that Moses is not allowed to go to the promised land. That he has to hand leadership over to someone who can take up the reins and move forward with the people, with the children of Israel. And you've got a Joshua, except her name is Mariela. And you have a Caleb, except his name is Christopher. And before you lies a future that is unknown and exciting. But my task was to bring you thus far. My task was to take you from a storied past to the point where you can think about your future without any limits whatsoever. I can't tell you what to do, but I can tell you that if you stay true to our faith, if you stay true to the values that I have helped to refine and share with you over the years, you will prosper in ways even you cannot imagine. So, I may not be Moses, but I'm up here on Mount Pisgah, and I can see a little bit of the future, and I'll tell you more about that in just a moment. What your future looks like, no one knows. But this much I do know. This city needs you more than it ever has, but it will need you in new ways. From up here on Belknap Lookout, my Mount Pisgah, I can see that Fountain Street Church will become a people, much more than a place. Let's call it a dream as much as an institution, a sower of seeds that will exceed its capacity to reap the sheaves that grow from it. You will sow faith and hope and love and joy everywhere. Now, in the story, Moses dies, which is a dramatic and tidy end to the tale. I am not Moses, and I'm not dying, at least so far as I know. So we need to ask, how do we mark an occasion that ends an era and starts another? I'm here in front of the Calkins Law Office in Grand Rapids. I'm here because first I walk past it almost every day as I went from home to church. It's the oldest building still left in Grand Rapids. But I stopped here not for that purpose, but because of what's facing it. And I'm turning around so you can see it. There's a big bust of Abraham Lincoln. And the advice that he gave at Gettysburg is pretty much the advice I want to give you. That if you wish to honor my tenure and those of others, you live up to the things they believed in. You change your life. I know that it's great to have things built like busts or statues or have buildings named, and there is something to that. But in the end, what matters most is whether or not the ideals we preached and lived rubbed off on you. So if I have to give you any idea of what you should do because I was your minister, it is make those 9 words I gave you long ago the words you live by and are accountable to free the mind, to grow the soul, to change the world. Those 3 things are enough to keep you going for years. How you do them will change. And in fact, that's your decision to make, because they will be different in every age. They will have different shapes and forms depending on who is in the church, who is leading the church. But those missions remain exactly those that I believe in and you believe in. Do that, and things will be great for you. So be bold in stretching your mind to include race and class and all that shackles the human heart. Liberate your mind beyond where it's been before. Be strong in stretching your soul beyond the familiar and the comfortable. Be brave in risking what you think is important for you personally for something greater than you all around you. Well, I've offered you enough advice and enough solemnities. My real job is to say, get going. Go. Be off. Gone. Make it so. Don't worry about me. Because if you do these things, I'll be right behind you the whole way. And that will be enough for me and for you. Well, here I am at home with one more thing. This is a worship service, and worship involves at some level something like a prayer. Of all the moments of all the years I've spent with you, It has been the prayerful moments that have been the most potent. And that was because we were together, and I was seeing you and hearing you and feeling you, which I can't do anymore because I'm here and you're all over the place. So for me, prayer is something we do together. But as I recall, Anne Lamott said there are really only 3 prayers: help, thanks, and wow. I add oops, I think that counts. And if I can't pray the way I usually do, I can say thank you. So I've written out a few words of thanks, and if that isn't quite as spontaneous and as spiritual as I would like to be, it will have to do. First of all, thank you for inviting me to travel with you for the last 15 years. It took courage to ask me, and it took nerve for me to accept, but my life and that of my family has been deeply shaped by that moment and those years. Along the way, you changed too, and so did Grand Rapids and the country. We are in a very different world than the one I joined in 2005. And not all of those changes were welcome or easy, but we weathered them together. And that's part of what I'm thankful for. We learned that almost every challenge can be met if we keep faith with one another, if we hope for the future, if we try to love one another, and if we choose the joy that makes itself available from time to time. I'm going to say some special thank yous now. Thanks to the choir. There you are every Sunday in the front row, attentive, skeptical, appreciative, reliable, defenders of the faith, keepers of tradition, addicts of beauty, critics of folly, never to be dismissed. Thanks to the character school, whom I did not know nearly well enough because you were doing church over there. But I know for a fact that you were better at it often than I was and than we were in the sanctuary, because you told more truth to each other, more souls did more growing there than any sermon I could offer or anthem we could treasure. You live the liberal faith more than we do. You are curious, eager, playful, raucous, fierce and funny. We adults should be more like you. Thanks to the chapel community, which did not even exist when I arrived. Church in a new key, let's call it. Outside the box, but inside the church, experimental and intimate, jealous for its own prerogatives, generous in inviting others to share it. How human, how authentic, how very Fountain Street Church you are. Thanks to the governing board and the properties committee, the religious services committee, the art committee, the archives, all the committees churches generally have, the practitioners of institutional care, shouldering the details where devils and demons and angels too are sure to lurk. You nudge this old battleship of a church through an ocean, helping it move along, and without you we would be dead in the water. Thanks to the Befrienders, the Women's Association, Social Action Committee, and all those other groups I cannot begin to remember that embodied the mission and made sure we lived out our faith inside and outside the church. Now, I am loath to remember individual names because I will forget some, and I don't want to leave anyone out, but I am going to name some folks on the staff. These are my day-to-day comrades and colleagues, the ones I depended on over the years. I want to lift up my clergy colleagues right now, Christopher and Andy and David, who in their various ways enrich, lead, enlighten, and make this church a richer and better place. And who remind me that they are not the first that I knew, that they bring back memories of Matthew and Ruth and Elizabeth and others who preceded them, who may not get the glory of Sunday, but who make the church a better place and make the mission happen. Our administrators over the years, if there's a hard job that no one can do perfectly, that's it. Mastering the machinations of money and buildings and policies. So I want to send my gratitude to Jack and Patrick and Pamela and Ken. Our musicians, we've had so many musicians over the years, Carl and Martin and Jennifer and Stephen and Jean and Phil and James and especially Marilyn. All of you decorated our souls with gladness, to quote an old German chorale. You all made me look good, and I am eternally grateful. By being so good at what you did, I didn't have to do as much, which was a great gift as well. I'm going to save, though, some of my most heartfelt thanks to those that you don't see as much because, well, you don't see them, but they really do make a huge difference. I lift up Virginia, our communications and content manager, who is the next generation after Gail, who together span well more than a generation of service to this church. And Connor and Danny and Cliff and those in the audio-visual staff who make sure that we get lit and heard and recorded and that people beyond Fountain Street Church can take part and be enriched by what we do. I want to lift up Melissa, who spins the plates of chaos better than anyone in the house and can somehow keep them all moving. And I save my last and most personal thank you for Kim, who came here shortly after I did along with Melissa, who grew with the job and kept growing as it became larger, and who gave her heart to it and to me in ways that will leave a lasting mark on this church and on me as well. Let me save my last thanks for the many people in this community, members and those beyond, who invited me to walk with them personally in moments of their lives: birth, marriage, distress, despair, and death. I've kept almost all the letters I've received over the years, and the vast majority are notes about those moments. My name may not be engraved upon the walls, but it is enshrined in your memories and in mine. Some there be who have no memorial, it says in the book of Ecclesiasticus, but these were righteous, whose deeds have not been forgotten. Of this I am sure, and for this I am grateful. I crave no blessing for you. I have none to bestow. All that you need is before you. I do ask for your blessing and your prayers, that in the years before me I may live and serve in ways that honor you, that when people see me they say, that was the minister of Fountain Street Church, and they smile. And as all prayers are ultimately a request, this is mine, that you remember me in your thoughts and prayers, and that I may always, every day, remember that this too is a day which I did not make,
which the Lord has made, to count my many blessings, including the ties of love that give now and ever dignity, meaning, worth, and joy to all my days. And for this, I bid you say, Amen.
Good morning. So today, as we close out this service today, celebrating the ministry of Fred, I wanted to send a special thank you to Fred from all of us at Fountain Street Church. For me personally, it seems like just a couple of years ago that we wandered into Fountain Street Church. In fact, it was 2005, and Fred happened to be out on the corner greeting people as they walked into church that day, giving them a firm handshake, which was our first introduction to Fountain Street Church, that of a welcoming community that was accepting, and for that we'll be forever grateful. Fred has served, as you know, faithfully Fountain Street, giving us his best, most thought-provoking sermons. He's been there in times of crisis for us, giving us words of comfort. And he's also been there to settle the nerves of those people getting ready to get married. As you know, Fred has always been out there ahead of the rest as far as social justice issues. Fred has been out picketing for the right for everyone to marry, and now that's a law. And for that, we're thankful. He was also out there picketing in the very beginning stages of a small movement at the time called Black Lives Matter. Again, way ahead of his time. For this and so much more, Fred, we want to say thank you. We also want to be sure to say thank you to Wendy. Her dedication to our youth has not gone unnoticed, and your commitment to serving others, it has been truly appreciated. So as we say goodbye to this chapter of your ministry, I hope that your next chapter in retirement is full of fun, rest, laughter, and doing whatever the heck you want to do. You deserve it. So in the future, when we're working at freeing the mind, growing the soul, and changing the world, we can thank you for those words, that theme, and we'll carry that work on that you started here. We all thank you, and to both Fred and Wendy, have a great retirement. Take care.
Thank you.